The Florida Gators 2025 roster got better on the first day of the transfer portal being open.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast and Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen wherever you listen to podcasts. If you watch YouTube, you're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Tuesday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And yesterday, the Florida Gators did not add a new player to their roster, but they did find out that they would be getting one of their best players back for 2025. And to me, that's a big win, right? Florida Gators learned that Caleb Banks is coming back in 2025. And looking at just the pure production from 2024, there was not a single more disruptive player on this defense than Caleb Banks, right? 28 pressures, 4 sacks, 5 hits, 19 hurries, a batted ball, 13 run stops, so tackle for a gain of 3 or less. He was the guy at the top of the list, right? And I know that there were people on Twitter that were like, oh, I forgot, I think his name's Senjit, that he's an NFL draft guy. And he was tweeting, Caleb Banks is the best defensive tackle in the draft this year if he declares to the draft. I know that there were some Florida Gators fans that were like, oh, yeah, he's going to be a first-round pick. I don't know how high he would have gone. My guess would have been second or third round. Because while Caleb Banks was the most disruptive player on this Florida Gators defense, for a large chunk of this year, maybe the first half of this season, that wasn't saying much, right? Because the Florida Gators, they shifted at about the halfway point and they got way better in terms of rushing the passer and just disrupting offenses, right? So that first half of the year, sure, he was the most disruptive, but that's not saying much, right? Then that second half of the year, he just played bully ball. Got banged up in the Florida State game, so barely played in that one. But in those six pass rush snaps he played, he had 2 pressures. So I'll throw that out there. But LSU and Ole Miss are really the games where Caleb Banks dominated against NFL competition. Like that's the fact of the matter. It's not that he dominated against other SEC competition. It's not that he dominated against any other college competition. It's that he dominated against offensive linemen that are going to be in the NFL. That's what Caleb Banks did toward the end of the year. And yes, I understand people thinking he would have been drafted really high. If he can play an entire season, if he can play all of 2025 at the level that he played the back half of 2024, yeah, he's got a really good case for being a first-round pick next year. But I just think that there's not a large enough sample size of domination to justify taking him in the first round this year. So I think that's one of the reasons that he came back. He probably got, I would assume he got a third-round grade back, and so he probably figured, you know what, I could do better than that. Come back for another year with Gerald Chapman as well, and we'll run it back. I also think it's just a massive retention on your roster, which is, by the way, something that we spoke about last Wednesday when we went live to talk about the recruiting class and how, sure, it was a little lackluster in terms of adding new names on early signing day. But one thing you did really well was retain your class and retain some of your seniors if possible. And Caleb Banks is part of that where, yeah, I know that it's not a thing where people are going to go, oh, yeah, well, Florida paid him enough to come back. Realistically, there was probably a possibility where if he wanted to go chase a bag, he can enter the portal and he'd probably get paid more than he got paid at Florida. Because, let's face it, your first offer is probably not your best one, right? Or the first place that you get an offer from is probably not your best place, right? Or probably not your best offer. That's fine, but he's here. They gave him enough to keep him with the Florida Gators for 2025. So keeping Caleb Banks around is huge. Having him come back is huge. But also for me, it's a big retention because I said this yesterday. I really am not confident in what Florida has at the 3-tech spot behind Caleb Banks. You get Jamari Lyons back next year, and that's great. But we don't know what he's going to look like. You get DeAndre, because even Jamari Lyons looked pretty good in 2023 in a rotational role. We don't know what that's going to look like when it's a larger role. And then 2025, you'll have Caleb Banks, Jamari Lyons behind him. DeAndre Robinson probably thrown in that mix. Probably Brian Taylor Jr. a little bit thrown in the mix as well. But I got to say, I think getting Caleb Banks back is the biggest addition or the biggest retention that you can have on the defensive side of the ball. I think getting Caleb Banks back is more important than convincing a Shamar James to come back. I think it's more important than convincing pretty much anybody on the defense to come back. On the offensive side of the ball, we could have a conversation about if it's Austin Barber, Jake Slaughter, who all potentially back. If it's Justice Boone, who potentially back, Tyree Sapp, not Justice Boone. Thinking of the other guy that, had a lot of hype and I used to keep waving a flag about. But Tyreek Sapp actually lived up to expectations, and I think he'll be back. We haven't gotten an official announcement at the time of recording this. But I think Tyreek Sapp will be back, which if you can get both of them back, your defense is something fierce. Like, linebacker room looks really good. Secondary looks really promising. And with another year of development, could look really good. Your defensive line with Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp back would be massive. Again, we'll see about Tyreek Sapp. And Tyreek Sapp is arguably the best player on the defense, but I think that Caleb Banks was the most impactful player on the defensive line and probably the entire defense this whole 2024 season. So getting him back is huge. And also that's another thing where yesterday I spoke about, maybe you have to go into the portal and add a 3-tech if Caleb Banks leaves. I don't think you have to do that now. I mean, you might still want to look for a nose tackle. Maybe one that's gold, bronze, silver. I don't know. But you might want to still look for a nose tackle. But your 3-tech spot looks pretty good for 2025. And I don't think they should do this, nor do I think they will do this. But it wouldn't shock me if they kick the tires and just saying, hey, what if we just put Jamari and Caleb both out there at the same time and just let them be our nose 3-tech, depending on how the situation fits? Again, I don't think that that's what would happen. But who knows, right? I've been wrong before, been right before. I've been wrong before. We will talk about the Florida Gators activity in the transfer portal next on Locked On Gators. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch or make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And the Florida Gators have offered 2 players that we're going to talk about today. They've been relatively active on the first day of the portal opening, but this is also a tough thing because everybody says, like I saw people tweeting yesterday, so we're not going to do anything in the portal again this year because nothing happened yet, when nothing's happened with anybody in the portal so far. So I think that one's silly, if we're being honest about it. But Florida did have a couple offers go out to receivers where we kind of spent this whole time saying, hey, in the portal, Florida's probably going to go after some taller receivers. They need tall, speedy guys that can play on the outside. And of the two players that we're talking about today that Florida offered, well, they're taller, speedy guys that could play on the outside and have played on the outside. First one is Reggie Virgil, wide receiver from Miami of Ohio, which I know. Oh, Miami of Ohio, small school, doesn't matter. Yeah. Look, I have. There's plenty of reasons to be unhappy about certain players, certain whatever. Coming from a group of 5 school, if you're taking that simplistic approach, just take it somewhere else. I have no patience for dealing with that, especially when we're talking about Maction. We respect Toledo around here. Don't forget that one. But Reggie Virgil, 6'4", 190 pounds, runs an 11.5 in the 100-meter dash, which not amazing speed, but plays really fast. You look at his film, and he's outrunning everybody, chasing a deep ball down. He does a lot out there. 11.5 in the 100-meter, 22.5-foot long jump, 6', 6" high jump. I don't know why I said a half for the long jump and the actual 6 inches for the high jump. Don't ask me questions about that. I don't know. But great athlete with elite size. And I think that that's something that Florida, again, height, length, and verified speed is a thing that Florida often says, or that Billy Napier often says when he's talking about players, is verified speed. And also, I will say, I know the 11.5 is not amazing speed. Here's the thing. He plays faster than that. And now schools have access to GPS technology where they know the exact miles per hour that some of these guys are running, or that most of these guys are running, if not all of these guys. So they know the exact miles per hour that you run when you're on the field. If you're coming from the portal and you're coming from college, there's probably that information about how fast you're running. In high school, some places have that, right? That's stuff that you can track and you can gauge. And so as far as people that 11.5 is not awesome, don't care. I trust that they're looking for speedy receivers. That's something that they've consistently done. Yeah, I trust that the GPS time is probably considerably faster than that. Production-wise, 41 catches last year, 816 yards last year, 9 touchdowns last year. That's 19.9 yards per catch. Basically 20 yards per catch, right? Reggie Virgil gets downfield. And again, you look at his film, and his best play is just a deep ball right over the top, because that's what he does. He's pretty good at that. And when we look up at, you have DJ Lagway, who loves to throw the deep ball. I get it, right? On passes that were thrown 20-plus yards downfield, Reggie Virgil had 9 catches for 436 yards, 48.5 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, really athletic. And then you look at his long catches every week, and he had 75-yard catch in one game, 69-yard catch in another, 58, 51, 50, 41, bombs away with him on the field, right? So Florida, you're adding, if you get him, you're adding an elite speed receiver with 6'4" size and athletic traits. They are trying to set up a visit with him. And then there's also another receiver called Chase Sowell out of East Carolina, or he's from Humble, Texas, I believe is his hometown, but he went to East Carolina. Wide receiver who 6'4", 195 pounds, very similar size-wise. His dad played baseball for the Gators in the 90s. I believe it was 95 was the year they came up when we looked them up. And his mom played soccer on the only Florida Gators soccer team to ever win a national championship in 1998. And then she went on to go play for the U.S. women's national team. So Chase Sowell is not only a legacy, but a legacy of 2 pretty damn good athletes and pretty pretty accomplished athletes there. Chase Sowell had 34 catches for 674 yards and 3 touchdowns. This year, 19.8 yards per catch. In 2023, he had 46 catches, so more catches, 622 yards. So he had 12 more catches, 52 less yards, and 2 less touchdowns. So in 2024, he did more with less. And you look at some of his games, and he's averaging 20 yards per catch. Against Temple, he had 4 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown, 30 yards per catch. He's another one where it's like, yeah, you throw it deep downfield and he can go get it. I do think Chase Sowell might have a little bit more of the go up and get it mentality. I think if you're looking at Reggie Virgil, he might be more the, hey, tall man, run fast, run straight, throw it and let him get under it. I think Chase Sowell is a little bit more of a, hey, let him run deep. But if there's a defender on him, he's probably coming away with that ball. And I don't know. I take them both, right? But we'll take as many talented receivers as we can get. But Florida, interested in both of them. And again, they both fit the mold. The height, length, verified speed, multi-sport athletes that Florida consistently pursues under Billy Napier, not just at receiver, not just on the offensive line, but at just about every position. This is what Florida pursues. This is what Florida is looking for. And Billy Napier and his staff are once again looking for that in the transfer portal. And I know there's going to be people that complain about whatever they're going to complain about, right? People are going to complain about things. However, I feel like at least at receiver in the portal, have they missed yet? I don't think so, right? They've added Ricky Pearsall, Elijah Badger, Chim Dike. I think that's it in the portal. Yeah, I'll trust your portal evals at receiver at least, and we'll see who becomes a Gator at the end of the day. So we'll get that. But Florida Gators defensively also looking at a few kids, but we're going to talk about one specifically next on Locked On Gators. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites from legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more. Save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. A minimum purchase may apply. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. To wrap up today's show, we are talking about the Florida Gators trying to set up an official visit with Zechariah Poiser, a safety from Jacksonville State, 6'2", 190 pounds. And looking at the stats, looking at a little bit of the film from Jacksonville State, you're looking at someone that is capable of playing both safety spots, at least in this Florida Gators defense, which I don't know. I feel weird saying play both safety spots because they're so interchangeable right now. You look at what they did this year, and a lot of it was playing too high, and so very interchangeable. However, the slight differences that they have between each other, Zechariah Poiser could probably play both. Looks like he could play both, and based on what we've seen from him at Jacksonville State, checks those boxes. He came down and played in the nickel quite a bit at Jacksonville State. That's not something that I think the Florida Gators would look for him to do much. Maybe play more of the box safety. There's a tight end down there or a big receiver, but as much as playing the pure true star role, I don't think that that's something that they'd ask of Zechariah Poiser. And I said that I think they want someone that could play both safety spots and move around the secondary like a Triquez Bridges did this year for them, but to a lesser extent. And he might be a guy that you can look at and say, hey, he could be that. I do think that, again, I get it. Jacksonville State, not exactly a powerhouse program, and people are going to care about that. Here's the thing. Typically, great players from great programs don't portal. Great players from smaller programs do. And so I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, yeah, Jacksonville State, small school, don't care. That's silly. And like, we could be silly, but like fun silly, not dumb silly. I don't like being dumb silly. I like being fun silly. And that's more than I've wanted to say silly, but hey, we're here. But I do think Zechariah Poiser would be someone that can come in and compete immediately for a spot. I don't think any safety spot is guaranteed right now. I don't think that Jordan Castell has his spot locked in as he's the starter. I don't think Bryce Thornton has his spot locked in as he's the starter. I think that they've both had some really hot and cold games. Bryce Thornton had an all-American caliber game against Ole Miss just 3 weeks ago, something like that. Not too long ago, but yeah, an all-American caliber game against Ole Miss. But he's also had some, just to call it what it is, he's had some stinkers as well. And so I don't think that he's done anything to solidify his stance as, oh yeah, he's going to be a starter this year. Like, you look at the Texas game, and yeah, I know everybody played poorly, but you look at the Texas game, Bryce Thornton did not play well at all. You look at, for Jordan Castell, I don't think he played well in Ole Miss. I thought he played really well against Florida State before he got injured and left the game, and Greg Smith came in, who, by the way, probably going to be in that same spot that we talk about competing for a starting role. I see no reason to have any other expectation other than, hey, Zechariah Poiser could probably come in and compete for that spot as well, especially when you look at the safety room. You're losing Triquez Burgess, who played a lot of snaps for you this year. You're losing DJ Douglas, thankfully. You're losing Asa Turner, who didn't contribute much, and he got hurt in the Miami game after Xavier Restrepo. Him. But you're losing him. Got to add to that room, right? And we know that Florida wants to add to that room with veterans because they've got a lot of youth in the room right now, right? They just brought in 2 elite safeties in the 2025 recruiting class. Lagonza Hayward, Hilton Stubbs, elite safeties coming in. You need some veteran experience there. And Zechariah Poiser could be that. He's not, a 7th-year senior, but he's got more experience than most guys you'd be able to get. 78 tackles, 3 picks, 8 passes broken up on PFF, a passer rating allowed of 57.4. Play every spot. And I think that the Florida Gators on the defensive side of the ball can be about as selective as they want, right? You've got a lot of returning players. Both your linebackers come back, most likely, I'm assuming, Shamar. And if not, not too broken up about it. Really good youth in there. So linebacker room looks really good. Defensive line has a lot of promise. If they develop the way that they should develop, they're going to be really good. If you get a guy, again, a nose tackle in the portal, you get that. If you get an edge in the portal, great. I don't know if they're really going to pursue that. And then in the secondary, you kind of just need experience, right? I don't think that you have any glaring weaknesses on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that Florida can be about as selective as they want in the portal on the defensive side. And from the people I've spoken to in and around the program, Zechariah Poiser, I think he's going to have a lot more interest than probably fans think because he's not a household name. If I'm Florida, I don't let this kid leave campus without a signature. We know how the portal works, right? It's like, oh, Dane Key's setting up a visit to Georgia. He's probably going there, right? Like, a lot of the times, these kids take their first visit, and I feel like that they, again, I'm not saying they tend to do this, but it's pretty common where a kid takes a first visit and that's their last visit, and that's where they end up signing. So Florida, if I'm you, Zechariah Poiser, not leaving campus without signing something, right? It's at least how I would approach it. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow, talk more Florida Gators football for Locked On Gators and Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI.com, and I'll see you all next time.